Welcome to The Resilient Mind, a psychology-grounded podcast from Intellectual Healing. I'm Ofelia Chapa. Here we explore the inner mechanics of healing, how the mind, the nervous system, and identity work together over time. In our previous episode, we talked about what happens when discipline fails under stress, and when people say things like, I know what to do, I just can't seem to do it. What we're often seeing isn't a discipline problem, it's a system overload problem. And I shared a metaphor I used often with clients, the CEO and the employee. The CEO represents the regulated, thoughtful part of you, the part that can pause, think clearly, and make intentional decisions. The employee represents the reactive part of the system, the part that jumps into action, problem solving, and keeps things moving when pressure is high. Both are necessary, but when the system is under constant stress, the employee ends up running the entire company. And that brings us to today's topic, the invisible load women carry across life stages. So let me ask a simple question. What are you carrying that no one sees? And what is it costing you? The invisible load refers to the mental emotional labor of keeping life running, remembering, anticipating, planning, managing emotions, preventing problems, and holding responsibility for things that may never even get spoken out loud. It's not just the invisible tasks, it's mental tracking, the emotional monitoring, and the constant awareness of what needs to happen next. And for many women, that load shifts and expands across life stages: early career, relationships, motherhood, leadership, caregiving, and beyond. From the outside, everything can look perfectly fine. But internally, the nervous system has been running in management mode for years. And over time, that creates exhaustion that people often struggle to explain. They say things like, nothing is wrong, but I'm so tired and exhausted. And that's exactly why I'm hosting an upcoming virtual workshop titled The Invisible Load: Why Women Feel Exhausted Even When Everything is Fine. Because when the load stays invisible, it also stays unaddressed. Today, we're going to start unpacking that conversation and help explore this topic more deeply. I'm joined by a very special guest. Please welcome Geeta Sidhu-Robb. Geeta is an entrepreneur, success coach, and the founder of Nosh Detox and GSR Coaching. Over the past 14 years, she has worked with thousands of women to help them reconnect with their bodies, reduce stress, and create sustainable change in their lives and health. Geeta, welcome to The Resilient Mind.
Thank you for having me.
So, I wanted to kind of just get your take on your turning point, a little bit about what you began noticing in women and maybe patterns that you just knew you couldn't ignore.
Gosh, that's a wide question. We could be here for the rest of our lives, I think. I mean, let me break that down a little bit. Firstly, I think I think all women have a huge number of turning points, because our lives are generally just a series of turning points, because there are the times where we learn and tweak into the whole people-pleasing element, the time where our bodies change and we actually start to understand that there is a male gaze and how we respond to that. There is a place where our bodies shift and we internally have to respond to that. Then there's the place where you go to work and you have a system that's not built for women, it's only built for men. Then there's the place where you enter into a relationship and you're like, holy shit, is this how it's meant to go? Because no one told me this before. I'm sorry if that's a swear.
You're totally fine.
Thank you. And then there's the bit where you have children and everything that came before that just goes to up in fire, because it's a completely different remit. Again, I remember a nurse who used to work for me. She said, we have always had this much vaunted equal relationship. And she said, I was holding our child and looking at him at his birthday, and he was standing in a corner drinking with his friends. And I was holding our baby, and I thought, wow, that is so interesting. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, because he hadn't really wanted her to get pregnant, and she got pregnant, and she wanted to keep the baby. And there was that unspoken thing of, well, be grateful, at least you have the baby, therefore overcome it and do too much. And then going back to, literally, how long do you have? I think all this to say, Women are constantly put under an enormous amount of pressure because none of the systems that we live in are made for women. Women cannot bring their biology to work. They cannot bring their needs to the family. They cannot bring their desires into their lives. Yeah. And so therefore, not a single element of a woman's life, to such a large extent, in a way, I think that we don't even properly quantify it. We don't even understand this, is ever anything that we have. So we're always the German person living in Japan, never quite getting it right, never quite speaking the language properly, making a good facsimile of it, kind of muddling through okay, but never quite getting it right.
Absolutely. I totally see where you're going with that, is for women, especially for women to be, it's almost like double duty, right? Where they have not only have to do all the things that they know they have to do, but then going into that where you're describing men's world, men set up easily for men, for women to have to come into that and then do that double duty with that, right? It's kind of like gets pushed aside or get dismissed. I can actually recall a time when I was in corporate, because my first 20 years of my career was in corporate retail. And here I was, been in the business for many years, didn't have full graduate level degrees, and then men coming in and me training them, and then finding out that they're making way much more money than I was making.
And becoming your boss.
Yes, and then becoming my boss, exactly. And so that is such an overwhelming feeling, and then feeling like your hands are tied, you can't do anything about it.
I have a story about this. There's a company that I worked with, very, very large global telecom business. And the guy that was running this department was having a conversation with me. And he said, let's take it that he's, I don't know, let's make him Chinese. And he is living in France. And because I'm trying to make it my NDAs. So there's a Chinese man living in France. And this guy comes to me and he goes, Geeta, I've taken over a department with 2,400 people. And the problem is I feel stupid. I'm like, what do you mean you feel stupid? He goes, I run the national telecom business with this company, but because my French is not fantastic, I feel stupid all the time. And I'm like, I felt like being mean about it and going, welcome to our lives. But then I thought, no, this is my client. So I said to him, the national language of this company is English. He said, yes. I said, make them all speak English. He goes, what do you mean? I said, make them all speak English. He was like, the whole department? I'm like, yes, make them all speak English. He went, all right. So he got them all to speak English. And he came back in about a week to 10 days and went, holy shit, that was a game changer. Because now every time he spoke French, they were grateful. Because it changed. The context behind him speaking French changed. It wasn't, you're not goat. Everybody had to go into a third language. They're like, how'd you like them apples, baby? We don't like them apples. Those apples suck. Oh, really? Okay, so there's a place where you just have to understand context every single step of the way.
Yes.
Because if you don't understand, and that's what I'm excellent at. I'm spectacular at context because I'm an Indian woman from an upper class aristocratic Indian family. So context is everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's everything, because you don't have the rights or the status. Well, you have the status. You don't have the rights or the requirements, anything that you don't get and ask for and hang on to for dear life. Mm-hmm. Context is everything.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So okay. So I'm saying what you're saying. You're going deeper into the systemic of it all. So let's tie that into some of what our topic is. So like the emotional labor accumulation. It sounds like that's where a lot of it can be developed from. So when you hear emotional labor, what are your thoughts?
Yes. I'm like, I don't know what thoughts you want me to have. I mean, the thing about emotional labor is that for women, we come to emotional labor in many different categories, right? It's never one. And this is why the male approach to problem solving is really good for men, but not as good for women. Because the male approach for problem solving is we'll pick one problem. Like that does not help women at all, because we have 25 problems in the same place that we're always trying to fix. So what would I think of in emotional labor? I would think emotional labor that I have to carry the emotional state for today of my family, but I also have to carry the emotional state for them for tomorrow, because I want to preempt what problems are going to come and fix those. So I'm already tracking. Then let me also carry the emotional state for my elderly mother for today and for tomorrow. And then let me be the carer that looks after her. So I'm responsible for so many people's lives emotionally without actually blinking. That's at home.
Yep.
That is way before I even got into work. Now you want to give me a team to run? Shoot me now. I'm now responsible for their emotional state as well, because I can't tell them to shut up and get on with it, because apparently that's bad teamwork. Apparently that's not being a good leader. So, oops, don't, you know what I mean? So you can't do that. You've got to be emotionally available and accessible and compassionate and all these things. Then the third emotional load here is that it's your personal emotional load. We haven't even got to that yet.
Absolutely.
So you have had to manage and keep balance and it's the precognitive behavior, it's the actual emotional behavior for everybody in your life. Then it's for everybody in your work. Then at the very end is you.
Mm-hmm.
So which emotional labor do we want to be talking? Let's not even go into the fact that, for example, later today, I have to take my car to the garage. And the man who told me to book my car at the garage said, I'd be careful, because actually don't get anything major done because your car doesn't need it. So I have to then carry the emotional load of having to go in and talk to a bunch of men and work out whether I should be like, get this done, or do you mind just it?
Yeah.
Which frigging emotional load do you want me to talk about? The fact that I have to pander to your shit, or the fact that I just can't trust you at all?
Yeah.
Let's not even go into that.
Yeah. Well, that's
right?
exactly, yeah. And that's exactly what we're talking about. It's all that, it's the invisible load of that. And all that is not, it's not seen. So it doesn't get addressed.
Priced or valued.
Exactly. Yes. And that's exactly what we're talking about with the invisible load. It's like you just nailed it, because that's exactly true. Because we're not only, our emotional load of the things that really truly matter to us get sidetracked. They get pushed aside because these are more important. And not only are they necessarily important for us to handle, but it's also to help us feel like we can be a part of like you just described, the garage, having to go take your car in. It's like, okay, now I have to put on this extra hat of protecting myself, that I don't get, cheated out just because I'm a woman. I may not know it will be perceived that I don't know what they're going to be talking about or what my car needs because of that role identity. Yeah, that role identity, which goes into our next subtopic for today, is our in the invisible load, is that identity fragmentation. And I think it goes without saying that we can really lose ourselves and our identity. And I see that a lot in my clients, where they really struggle. They've been living for everyone else's expectations and even society's expectations, and not really had any, and knowing they had no part in the decision making, the rules that were created and all these things, but they have to abide by them, and they can lose themselves, their true identity, who they really are and who they stand for, what their core values are, what's important to them, and how to incorporate that in their daily lives, because they're having to accommodate and assimilate into their environment.
I think also that with that, we struggle as women to understand our core values, because no one gives a shit. We're not brought up to have outstanding values in terms of what we care about, right? And the problem with that is that people pleasing and core values don't go together. And I often say that because when I came out of my divorce, we were my divorce went. My ex-husband emptied our bank accounts, and we ended up with £200, and I had 3 kids under the age of, which is about $300, and 3 kids under the age of 7. And we were homeless, and I was sleeping on sofa cushions on the floor for 6-8 months. And when I'm looking at that, what that taught me was that when you're absolutely poor, the one beautiful thing about poverty, because there is very little that is beautiful about poverty, is you absolutely know who you are, and you know what you will do for money, And I was constantly tested for what I would do for money, because I had none. What would I do? And women are. would you do to feed your kids? What would you do to look after? What would you do? And so that was a place where I really developed values because I understood what they were.
Yeah.
Right. And when you come out of that, the one thing that I will say is I teach my clients these days because I coach, senior women CEOs and how to grow businesses. And I teach them to curate to the nth degree their personas. And this is not traditional advice. They're like, oh, you need to be yourself. Absolutely. Do you have to tell anyone who you are? Absolutely not. So I teach my clients to have a version of themselves that shows up for the world, a curated version that shows up for people that are closer, and then the version of you that shows up for your friends. That's private. I have a version of me that shows up with my best friend and the stupidity and frivolity of that. Mm-hmm. You do not have to show all of yourself everywhere.
Absolutely.
Right? When you're in an office, it would be the worst thing that you could possibly do, where you were open and displaying your vulnerabilities. Don't do it. Men don't. Mm-hmm. Men will work next door to someone. I have been given advice like this when I was running a very big company. They're like, it doesn't matter if they like you as long as they're good at what they do. And now I realize how stupid that advice was for me. But for a guy who doesn't mind working next to someone who hates him as long as he does his job, go you. As a woman, oh my God, it destroyed me. And I now prize loyalty as the highest characteristic of what I require from someone working for me.
Yes.
Which people find music. And I'm like, I don't know about you, babe, but if I'm paying you money and you're working for me, you best be working for me. Which means we like each other, you like me, you will support me, you want to help me. Otherwise, I don't know what you're doing here. Leave.
Yeah.
And then the minute they're not on side, it becomes apparent super quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. You're speaking my language, but in a different. You're speaking.
Yeah, we do it a bit from different places, right?
Different language, because I teach assertiveness, and I have to really emphasize that assertiveness is not combativeness. It is not aggressive
or defensiveness.
It's communicating your needs effectively. I say that pretty much every day. Communicate your needs effectively. And then I'll throw in, you can do it compassionately, and I've even been challenged. Why do I have to do it compassionately? And I said, well, because you'll be heard. You'll be heard. And
I'm calming, because if you're doing it with compassion, you're also calmer.
Yes, exactly right. And you can be heard. And then I even teach I statements. I mean, I go down to the nitty gritty of it. I give, examples. We role play. We do it all. And so I think that's so important. And another term that I kind of really enforce in my sessions, especially in my group therapy, when I have a lot of people at once, is that being yourself, unapologetically authentic. It's like, and
who you are.
Yes. And it goes to what you were saying, how sharing too much, of course, and I actually help folks with that as well. It's like when to share, how much to share, in what settings to share in. Absolutely. I think that's important. But again, communicating your needs effectively and knowing how to do it. And there's different circumstances that we go into role play with. It's like, okay, if you want to get your needs met, or when the relationship matters, when the relationship is the priority, or when your self-respect is the priority. And there's different ways to communicate based on
completely. Well, because every time it's like changing. Remember when we were kids and we had those kaleidoscope things? Is that what they were called?
Yeah.
When you twist it, the view changes.
Yes.
It's that you have to get it to a place and understand that the view changes every time you change how you see yourself.
Yes.
When you change and people always like, can we start like when I'm helping somebody to grow a company, they're like, let's start with the money. And I'm always looking at them going, yeah, let's not. Yeah. Why don't we just start with the toxic voice in your brain for a hot minute? Because if I can start with where you're mean to yourself, I will tell you why you're not making money. Because you wouldn't talk to your best friend like you talk to yourself. Or she wouldn't be your friend for much longer, would she?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here's some really good topics that you can really talk about because of your work. By the way, I love your work. I think you do great work. The hormonal shifts that amplify stress. When I work with clients, is like understanding warning signs. So that way you know how to catch it and you can manage it better.
Well, the hormonal shift for women, I mean, we're very lucky because it's easier than men. It is harder and it's easier. The first thing is anticipate cleanly and clearly that post the age of 35, there will be a hormonal shift incoming to you. So it'll come between 35 and 38, and that is perimenopause. It will last 11 to 13 years. Mm-hmm. There are a wild range of symptoms of up to about 70 horrible symptoms that can happen in perimenopause, some really painful, some not at all painful. Like I have been in a place where I public speak a lot, and I'm standing in front of an audience of 200 people. And in the depths of my perimenopause despair, I absolutely forgot the last word that came out of my mouth. Mm. It was like I did not know what the last word was. And I had to stop and kind of go, let me just talk about this for a minute, as though I had meant it, because I stopped going on live television for like years because I was so afraid that I wouldn't know what the heck my name was, right? And this is just standard practice for women. It happens to all women. Yes. And so the first hormonal shift is to understand that this is coming to a cinema near you, and there is nothing you can do about it. But what you can do is curate the experience you have during it. And there is a similarity between being stressed the heck out and perimenopause. So burnout and perimenopause are very similar, and you have to deal with the burnout before you work out what the perimenopause symptoms are. And basically, you have to deal with high cortisol. And cortisol is one of those great, it's like a heist. It's a thief. It will take money out of your estrogen, progesterone, fertility hormone accounts and steal them all and put them into the cortisol account and leave you draining on the other side and run your whole body from that space, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a hormonal shift. And this is something that honestly goes on for women from 35, 38 through to 50, 51. Mm-hmm. It's a really big deal. So there are three things that tend to happen in burnout, cortisol extreme, as well as perimenopause. Your digestion shifts, your sleep shifts, and your stress responses completely shift to fight or flight as a normal thing. Your nervous system just goes to, oh, it's okay, to, oh, shoot, we're in danger forever. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that is, you don't sleep, you don't digest, you don't make fertility hormones because your body's like, we're in danger. Mm-hmm. And if you can't get pregnant, you can't run and be pregnant, you won't get pregnant. Mm-hmm. Right. If you can't run and eat calmly, you won't eat calmly. It will just pull glycogen. If you can't sleep like the dead because you're not safe, therefore you have to sleep in bits and pieces, that's what happens. Yeah. So I don't know if this is what you're asking, but this is really and truly, when this starts, the first thing to understand is the drop in progesterone. We always talk about estrogen. The drop in progesterone is kicking your butt. It is the sleep, it's the anxiety, it's the shouting, it's the pain, it's the difficulty. Go get your hormones checked. Mm-hmm. And when your doctor tells you there's nothing wrong with you, get another doctor, because that's bullshit. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Or join our TikTok community. We have 80,000 women on TikTok that we talk about this all day, every day. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. So that's really good, insightful information. And that's one thing I have to say. I tell my clients that too. Question authority. Absolutely. Just because they have a doctor and they have that degree and they're sitting in front of you, you're more than welcome to question me as well. But ask, double check and ask the question. Why do you say they're not trained? They're not trained in perimenopause because it's an elective. In the United States, in the United Kingdom, perimenopause is a 4-hour elective. Like that's bullshit, right? They don't, and even endocrinologists don't understand female hormones. Yeah. The testing that is done on men, not on women. Yeah, you just don't assume any of this is made for you. It's just not. Absolutely. No, I agree. Even in my field, in the mental health field, all of it is male dominant. Absolutely. And has been. And we're still in some barbaric times of how we treat. And I don't want to get started on that. Nothing has changed in that, but yes, exactly. But no, you really touched on some really key points that help is the nervous system dysregulation and how the hormonal imbalance can really affect that. That's one thing that I think is important for us to get information out there about that, because I teach that a lot about the nervous system dysregulation and how to regulate yourself. Here's a good question. How do you determine when you're working with your clients about over functioning, high achieving? I always tell my clients, my high achievers, go you, go you. But when are you resting and restoring? When are you giving yourself back the rest to restore yourself? How do you identify that in your clients? Problem with this is that I have always found is that when people would say that to me, they were like, what's your stress levels? And I'd be like, oh, 25 out of 10, right? They're like, so how can we reduce your stress? I'm like, I don't know. You want me to sell the kids? I've been a single parent since I was in my early 20s. I don't understand what you mean by that. Like, this is just my life. There are 75 million women that will tell you the same stuff. This is just how we live. So what happened was that the rest and restore never rested and restored because I could never let go enough on a somatic level of my nervous system in order to recuperate. I remember when I was running, my company was almost at its biggest, I was 40, maybe 4. And I remember doing one of those tests on how old you are. And it told me I was 57. I was like, damn, I'm not doing that again. I've joined a new gym yesterday. They're like, oh my God, this will tell you how old you are. I'm like, no, we're good. Thanks. I'm not doing that. I don't need to know. And it was super funny because I was, I actually did one of those about a year and a half ago, and it told me I was the age I was. I was like, well, that's a win. You just don't know it. Yeah. That's a big win. So I think we need to understand this, that stopping is not resting and restoring, right? Absolutely. What we need to, especially in the perimenopause, when I'm talking about like in your life and the people you teach, I'm sure you teach them how to do that. When I'm in the perimenopausal, the driven, ambitious woman that's trying to build a company, you can't tell her to let go because she can't. Mm-hmm. What you've got to do is really get her to understand that her self-esteem is very low. Mm-hmm. And that when you can raise, I coach the space between self-esteem and self-confidence because everybody has self-confidence. You can just look at them and they do. But the self-esteem is what they don't have. And so when you can raise self-esteem, all these miraculous things happen because and I didn't understand this for so long. I just coached people instinctively for so long. I didn't understand the thing. I just was like, why do I coach them? They make 5 times more money. Why do I coach? And I just they lose all this weight. I didn't understand it. I just knew it worked. And I didn't care. I was poor and I had 3 kids and let's just do the coaching. It works. Move on. Next type thing. And then when I had space and I started to think about it, but self-esteem is self-worth, self-love, and self-value. Now, when I help you to see your self-worth, self-love, and self-value, your nervous system's calming the shit down instantly. Yeah. It just is.
The byproduct.
Because it doesn't need to feel unsafe in order to be driven. Because I remember people saying to me, you need to be less driven. I'm like, don't be taking my drive away. That's how I feed my kids. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that's not true. Because when you aren't pushing your way to success, you can magnetize opportunities that flow into you that are perfect for you, mm-hmm. that are suited for you, mm-hmm. that work for you, and that help you to make. Oh my God, I can't tell you. We had a client who hated her job and she was asset manager for some bank. She hated them. She's like, why am I here? I hate my life. I hate my job. They don't pay for my taxis. They won't even buy me. It was all that shit, Yeah. 9 months. We got her to a place where her self-worth was high enough that she got offered the job of becoming the 19th woman that chaired a NASDAQ company. Mm-hmm. NASDAQ is the 19th woman. It's just insane the things you can do.
Powerful.
Stop pushing.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't know how to not push because it's what we have to do from when we're born. It's just a real lesson in how to learn it.
Yes, balance. And that's what I always keyword is balance, because it could be skewed. It doesn't have to be middle ground from the extreme. It can be skewed. But I think everybody, and that's another thing that I teach, because you're right. Especially I hear this all the time with clients. It's like, they didn't even really understand the context of resilience. Resilience isn't overextending. Resilience is knowing when you are overextending and how to bring yourself back into your window, what we call it window of tolerance. And so, like I said, I'm a high achiever. I'm a businesswoman. I'm an entrepreneur. I have multiple things going on at the same time. Mother, grandmother, wife, all these things, business, 2 businesses, things like that. But knowing when to come back into your window, or at least close into your window of tolerance. And you're right. We overextend ourselves constantly. And so that's one thing I think is important. So thank you so much for sharing that. So I do want to get some good practical takeaways. 3 signs you're carrying invisible load.
Well, A, do you have a vagina? Then you're doing it. Just assume you are. Number 2, look for the overwhelmed exhaustion. Like when women say to you, I don't have space to think. I can't even think. You know what used to make me laugh when I was younger? I used to think the concept of being able to go somewhere and stay in someone else's house felt like the best kind of holiday or hotel or whatever, because it's not my life.
Yeah.
I can't do anything. Like people who say, I have a holiday and I stay at home. I'm like, where's the holiday? Like, I don't even understand that, because your shit's still here that you've got to deal with, right? I don't feel like I'm relaxing until I get in an airplane and I go to another country or whatever, because you never stop.
Yeah.
So it's that lack of mental space.
Yeah.
That's the space if you can't find mental space, that is your biggest signal that your nervous system is fried and that you aren't firing on all cylinders correctly, and that you don't have a sense of balance and alignment, and therefore you aren't attracting opportunity. You are pushing because you feel unsafe, and that's why you're driven. Being driven is a fear that you won't get through enough. You won't get enough, right? It's a scarcity drive, impulse. Yeah. And a more relaxed version is not scarcity based. It's based on self-worth. Like, of course, this will come in. It's an understanding for me today that my coaching is worth so much because of the results it gets, as opposed to I just used to coach intuitively and it had all these great results. Yay. Now I'm like, no, I know what I do and I'm calm about it. So if somebody doesn't want to work with me, I'm like, we all move on. Yeah. Then they're not meant to. Yeah. Right. But when I was younger, that was just something I did wrong. I should have changed it. I should have said this. I should have said that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'll give the third one that I think is very vitally important. If we can notice when we get easily irritated or frustrated, even with our loved ones, especially with our loved ones.
Called perimenopause.
Yeah. So we know we gotta call a timeout when we can catch ourselves doing that, because I think it's a big sign for us that we are in that invisible load. Okay, so one micro regulation strategy that I'd like to share, it's my go-to. Breathing is such an important piece of us. I mean, it's what keeps us alive. We have to breathe, right? And so sometimes, especially when we are in overload, we do shallow breath. We tend to be in shallow breath where we're not getting deep breaths. So I always do a box. It's called the square or box breathing.
Yeah, the 4-4-4-4. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
And the most important part is breathing out slowly. So, and extending it longer than the breathing in. So I always say 4, 4, 6, 4. So it's almost like somewhat of a triangle or somewhat of a rectangle, but breathing in for 4, holding it for 4 seconds, and then releasing it for 6 seconds. So you want to really do that slow exhale. So just really quickly, it's like a biohack. It triggers the vagus nerve that's at the stem of your brain and all the way down to your central nervous system, calms you down immediately. So that is something I encourage folks to try. I'll go ahead and go into my closing. I do have some shout outs that I want to mention. So if this conversation resonated, we're going deeper live on March 19th at our virtual workshop, The Invisible Load, Why Women Feel Exhausted, Even When Everything is Fine. Check out Geeta's perimenopausal community, a safe space where you can ask real questions and get real answers by professionals in the field, hosted each Sunday. And in light of today's topics, visit Intellectual Healing's digital toolkit, Confidence Unlocked, a structured toolkit that blends psychology-based exercises, reflections, and real-world tools to help you perform. The links will be listed below in the description of this episode. Geeta, do you want to briefly mention something about your perimenopausal community?
Well, we launch it on Sunday. And what we've decided was that because there's so much information out there, but very little support, we created a community for £10 a month, which you can find us from TikTok, any of my socials. And you can come on and ask live questions weekly to an expert. So 1 week you have a personal trainer. What exercise should I do in perimenopause? Because let me tell you what, it's not cardio. Week 2, you can ask a nutritionist what I should eat. Week 3, ask a doctor. What questions should I ask my doctor? Week 4, come and talk to me about mindset. We'll navigate you through perimenopause live, being able to ask questions because there is no cookie cutter. You need the help as you go through each of the thing. So we're just trying to work out how to make it an easy solution. So we put a bunch of experts, which we asked nicely. They all said yes, and it's 10 quid a month.
Absolutely.
Ask your questions.
Absolutely. We'll have the link below in our description section of this episode. So we'll go ahead and close. As you leave this episode, just take a moment to notice what resonated, not to analyze it, simply to hold it with awareness. Resilience isn't built by pushing harder. It's built by understanding more clearly what your system needs. Thank you for spending this time with us. And until next time, this is The Resilient Mind.